Namaste and welcome to the Divas That Care Network. I'm your host, Gia-Raquel Rose, owner of Airs Above Yoga, and you are listening to Above the Ground podcast. If this is your first time tuning in, our network is going into its 16th year and is listened to in over 30 countries. I would like to personally thank you for giving me the gift of your time. As always, it is my honor to hold space with you. And today we are going to talk about yoga asana, but we're going to do it a little bit differently. Today is a pretty triggering day. I'm going to go with triggering day. It's a wonderful day, but it's also a triggering day for many different reasons. And I just want to, unfortunately, touch on something that today is a day that affects everybody's life. And in addition to affecting everybody's life, it's also a day that, um, for me, has a direct association to another thing that affects more lives. And I think that we are comfortable with, and is a natural evil of this world in and of itself. And I'm not going to get into the health debate of it, but as we are moving into May, it is a month of, we'll say celebrations, right? But also, it's a month of a theme, I should say, of facing our fears, right? Faith over fear, victory in the face of fear, however you want to coin that. And we've talked in the past about that. I feel like the yoga asanas that come to mind for that are those that are, your warriors, right? Your warriors in your face. And we did a whole sequence on that. So I encourage you to go back and have a listen to all the warrior poses because there's a warrior within every one of us. And that leads me to the thing that is a thread for many people, almost everyone, I would unfortunately wager. And that is a pretty unsavory, unwelcome guest, invader of our bodies, and that is cancer. So today is Mother's Day. And for those of you who know me, know I lost my mom to cancer. And it just seems to be a theme, some of the most important people in my life. It runs in my family, it runs in the family of friends of mine as well. And it's just, it's not, you know, people drop the F-bomb a lot when they talk about it. Um, and when it comes to yoga and it comes to yoga asana, I think that there are a couple different ways, right? Yoga is wonderful for healing in general. It's wonderful during treatment, post-treatment, pre-treatment, always. One of my favorite yoga instructors, I call her my yoga mom, fitting for the day. She is a survivor and a warrior, and she is one of the strongest and most wonderful women that I've had the pleasure of knowing as I embarked on my journey with yoga and as a yoga instructor. And I think we often go to the fight aspect, when we're talking about cancer and the battle and fight the cancer. Um, and the thing that's unfortunate about that is that while it's necessary, right, there's also an element of the correlation with an autoimmune disease where, in one way you're fighting your own body, right? It's the treatments for cancer take a massive toll on the body, and much like an autoimmune disease, it's you're fighting yourself in a way. And so when you talk about the idea of victory in the face of fear, courage or bravery is being afraid and big fat doing it anyway, right? And then the flip side of that old adage is the line between bravery and stupidity is a thin one, and kind of based upon the outcome of the success of the same, right? If you succeed, you're brave. If you fail, you're an idiot. Just to inject some levity into a not so joyous discussion. But when it comes to not only the fear of, right, our mortality, the inevitable, um, but the fear of the unknown, right? And I think all of us choose to ignore that reality. We know nothing about tomorrow. That's why yoga and being in the present moment is so important. We don't know what we're going to face. We don't know if we're going to get hit by a bus, or if we have it tomorrow, or what it's going to bring. So the unknown is a theme, right? It's a thing. It's we're faced with it every day. And I think that when you start to look at that, you can fear can be crippling, like think deer in headlights, right? It can be destabilizing. It can shut you right down. And I think the bravest thing is to take the next step, whatever that step may be, in whatever direction it is that you hope is for your highest and best good. And I think that when it comes to loss, grief, cancer, battle, disease, the things that are outside of your control, which, let's face it, the majority of our existence lives beyond our control, but we are responsible for how we react. That is the one thing we can control. And what is it in yoga and in asana that brings us into recognition of our fear in a way that we can become one with it and still move forward? And I believe my answer to that is not the right answer, and it's not anybody else's answer. My answer is the stillness. Um, Being with it, sitting with it, not just necessarily fear, but grief, is a big one too. Running is a huge thing, type A, right? Avoidance is a huge thing, but being with it, sitting in it. And so the asanas, while one might not link these two, or these asanas, I should say, these particular poses with the idea of victory in the face of fear. I feel like people are going to go warrior, right? Or people are going to go, like some aggressive standing posture, right? Like I'm going to go with mountain pose. I'm going to go with Tadasana. I'm going to go with stillness. I'm going to go with the opposite ends, the heart openers and the forward folds, the opening yourself up to the inevitable, whatever's coming next, by opening your heart, and then the surrender to that which we cannot control in your forward folds, in your child's pose, for example. And I think that, mountain pose, Tadasana, one that we, kind of gloss over as it is the staple pose. It is standing still in place, being the mountain. And you can get into all the different aspects of the body mechanics, and I will, because of course I will. But the feet are the source, the solace, and the base of your mountain, right? The four corners of the feet. You actually are gently internally rotating your legs so that you have the feeling of your kneecaps being lifted, your quads are engaged, your lower back is releasing because you're allowing that rotation, which I talk about all the time for those ladies that have some lumbar unhappiness, or gentlemen that have lumbar unhappiness, or no gender, whatever you choose, whatever. If you have lumbar unhappiness, you will know. And having this very, very strong, stable center up through your core, and then this relaxed but active feeling through the shoulders and the neck. And whether you decide to raise your arms up or have them at your sides or take them in prayer, the idea of a mountain pose, not dissimilar across the board with standing poses and asana, and our warriors are nothing if not standing poses. But the idea of just being the constant for yourself and sitting in that stillness, being still. And you could say processing, you could say taking it all in. Everyone has a process, good, bad, indifferent, or otherwise. Um, but when it comes to sitting with reality, sitting with the truth, whatever truth, reality, situation, circumstance that you have to face that is out of your control on Mother's Day, right? It's been almost 20 years since I've lost my mother, and I full disclosure, I hate today. I hate today. It is my least favorite, second least, the day she died, but second least favorite day of the year. So 20 years later, and I still sit with the emotions of that. Um, And then there are still things, life still goes on. There are other things that we have to stand and face. And so I think a lot of times if you watch, I like to think of like David and Goliath, or you think of these kind of archetypal moments in history, in movies, in culture, in stories where, there's I'm going to use the metaphor David and Goliath. There's the big bad guy, right? And then there's this just little tiny human just standing there, standing, turning to face, and just being in that position. And that's why I think for me, mountain pose is is the pose of not only facing reality, facing your fears, being the mountain for yourself, being that constant, immobile, grounded, tall space, being that for yourself, being that for others is so important. And as you begin to move through the emotions, whatever they may be, whether it's fear, whether it's grief, whether it's anger, whether it's pick your poison, right? Because all of these emotions, unfortunately, they are valid and they are true to the human experience. They're not the most high vibe, air quotes for those. I have to say it like every episode, air quotes for those of you who are not watching. We talk about high vibe and like, there's a lot out there about like toxic positivity, blah, 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 retrain your mind, be Delulu, all of those fun Insta words. But at the core of it, there's validity to retraining your inner dialogue 100%. I do it every day. I do it. So I'm not discounting that as a wellness self love practice. But there's also there is the thing in front of us that we're dealing with, the thing that is within our reality that we have to attend to. And being in that place of singular strength, of coming to your mat, of showing up to face that reality, of standing in your strength, standing in your power, having roots. And I think that's why for me, mountain pose really just kind of came at me as like the pose to discuss. And the different variations, because they call them by different names, but if you think of the beginning of a sun salute, you're standing in mountain pose, you inhale, you reach up, and now you're reaching up longer in your mountain pose, but you're still in mountain pose, and then you reach out and you humble yourself and you bow and you come into a forward fold. But in essence, you're still a very strong base, and then you are still there is that surrender, from celebration to surrender. And I think that such is life, right? Such is life. So we are our own standing mountain throughout our lives, and that will remain unchanged, right? And there will come times where we're reaching up in celebration and joy, and times where we're bowing in surrender and humility. And knowing, you know, what to pick at what time is really an intuitive practice, right? It is between you, yourself, and your higher self, God, or whatever it is that you communicate with. And so when we talk about a yoga practice, when we talk about the asana and the fact that, when you come to your mat, you're becoming one with your body. And then we talk about something like cancer, right? It There is an element of literal fight or flight, and we come at it from a very like pitchfork and fire torch kind of like place. And I find the contradiction to that so hard to wrap my head around, because we have to attack our own bodies in order to fight for our lives in that instance. And so how do we support our bodies as we move through these challenges, no matter which side of the cancer fence you're on, whether it's happening to you or it's happening to someone you love? Like, it takes no prisoners. So obviously the win is victorious, being victorious over cancer. That is the goal. but also as you go through the process in your body of and knock on wood, to date, I have not had to. You never know. But as you go through a process, and I've witnessed the process, friends, family, it also happens to be the birthday today on Mother's Day of a dear friend of mine who passed away much too young of cancer, and the toll it takes on the body, and the toll that the medications take on the body, and how do you support the body through that? And I think that's where the yoga comes into play. That's where the surrender comes into play. So as your body is going through this aggressive treatment, what can you do to support yourself and your body, aside from the obvious medical treatments that coincide and that support you in that way? Can you come to your mat? Can you meet your body where it is? Can you stand in silence? Can you sit in silence? Can you take a child's pose, and can you surrender to your own fear? Can you surrender to your own grief? Because again, no matter which side of the fence you happen to fall on, let's be honest, there's a fear of losing yourself, there's a fear of losing your loved one. Um, and you can fight that fear. But how is fighting that fear any different than avoiding and running from it? So can you stand in mountain pose looking your fear in your face, and can you then surrender? Can you forward fold? Can you come onto your mat in child's pose? Can you kneel? Can you bow your head? Can you I've cried onto my yoga mat before in child's pose. Can you breathe, and can you be in the stillness to meet your fear? And maybe instead of looking at it as a fight, look at it as a form of union, becoming one with your fear, embracing it, surrendering to it. And this is not me saying you should surrender to your cancer. In no way am I saying that. But can you steal the power from the fear by embracing it, becoming one with it, and just allowing it to be? And in that way, overcoming it, potentially being, air quotes again, spoiler alert, victorious over it. Can the surrender, can the stillness bring you in touch with the parts of you that you are afraid to face? And can you ease the burden truly of that shock and awe? So when we talk about the body, and we talk about storing trauma in the body, and we talk about disease processes, and all of the mind over matter kind of conversations that one has when dealing with these discussions, there's an element of you know change the tape in your head, right? um Focus positive energy, think positive thoughts, and all of that is 100% true and good, and I support it and commend it and acknowledge it and clap and cheer. But I also feel like there's a part that needs to be integrated, that we often, that's the part that gets in the way of the fight, right? The fight, and I'm going to use a terrible metaphor, so forgive me in advance. But if we're literally thinking of like a battlefield, and it's a very masculine, and again, no gender, but you know what I mean, traditionally masculine kind of mental image, mental picture, and the battle of spear on spear, let's say, just I'm going to go back to like ancient time battle for this metaphor, and the bloodshed and the pain and the angst and the the energy beating into itself versus, and again, mental image with me here. So go to your mind's eye, and the mental image that just came to my mind is, I believe it was the Vietnam War in the 60s that had that very, very, what would be now a viral image, of, the hippie girl that puts the flower in the soldier's gun. I think most people, many people, should have a vague idea of what I'm referencing. But what if two of those warriors at the front line put their spears down and embraced each other? And that's what I mean when I'm talking about not fighting your fear. The idea of not giving up the battle against the disease process, but facing your response and your reaction with love, with acceptance, with, I will do a meditation. It's already percolating. Next week I will do a meditation on this, but the idea of the and I don't even, because it's not about the shadow self, right? This is actually nothing to do with the shadow self. Although you could argue that fear is an aspect of your shadow self that needs to be integrated, and you can make that correlation for this conversation as well. But I'm not talking about your shadow, because the shadow is usually like the negative parts of us that we avoid. This is, there's something in front of your face that is terrifying, right? Whether it's a natural disaster, for example, or a personal natural disaster, right? An earthquake in your body, right? Your body turning against you. Um, and and putting down the spear and hugging it. And that doesn't mean that you are loving your cancer away by any means. Again, F bomb cancer, 100%. But there's got to be there's got to be an internal conflict. And my only personal experience to date is the autoimmune disease, where I know that my body has turned on one of my organs. My immune system has turned on me, right? That's my only at all metaphor correlation that I can get into. And it's not the same. It's not the same at all. But can I hug my tiny little thyroid? Right? Like, can in the acceptance, can you facilitate the healing process by being your own mountain pose? Can you facilitate the healing process by surrendering to the, air quotes again, reality of the situation? And that's where, like I said, the poses that for me equate to surrender are prone forward folds, like a child's pose. Um, Another pose that comes to mind for this specific, this con I don't want to say confrontational, but this standing in the face of, is hero pose, which is a rough one for the knees, a very, very rough one for the knees. But if you can practice, you can put a bolster under it. And hero pose is where you are actually kneeling and block, bolster, pillow. Your knees are ever so slightly wider on your hips, so you're almost sitting right in between your heels, which is where you would place a bolster, pillow, or block, and you would sit to relieve the compression of the knees. You would sit on that. And obviously, it's also called hero pose in English. um, and it's pretty aggressive on the knees, but um, it's a way of grounding and being very, very still. And in that stillness, mainly your quads and the tops of your feet, your shins are releasing and opening and stretching, and you're breathing into it, and it's one of those, all yoga poses, you can just be in them and breathe, right? That is yoga. But some of them, to me, equate to this idea of standing tall, and you do in hero, you lengthen very, very tall. Um, standing very tall, being very grounded, being very supported, and facing forward, facing whatever it is that you are coming up against or is coming towards you, uninvited, let's say, uninvited. So hero is another one, and child's pose to me is your ultimate surrender pose, your ultimate head to the floor, knees wide, hips back, cry if you need to, let it out, let it out. Pigeon's another great one, but I talk about pigeon too much. Pigeon did come to mind for this, and it's a hip opener. So, if you have store trauma in the body and it happens to be in your hips, which it can be for many people, that's a big one. And the other one that spoke to me in this way, and I know I've talked about it before, but are heart openers. And I think that there's a similar little flow between Virasana or hero and camel pose. And camel pose is essentially, again, kneeling and lifting up your heart. And a lot of people, it's a back bend, right? And the ultimate kind of expression of heart opener, back bend in yoga is probably wheel pose. And it's not an easy pose, especially if you have any neck or shoulder injuries, or lower back injuries for that matter. But it is a full upward bow or wheel pose where you're standing on your feet, you're pressing your entire hips and spine up, and your arms are behind you, ideally palms in line with the shoulders, and you're pressing yourself all the way up off of the ground. And it is a deep, deep back bend. You can also mimic a wheel posture by rolling on a ball and starting to open up through the front of the hips and through the heart and through the abdominal muscles to start to prep for a full wheel, and building strength up in the arms and openness in the shoulders to get yourself there. Another ways, these are the postures that came to mind for me when I was putting this together. And wheel is probably the most aggressive posture. It is a deep heart opener, and it's honestly, wheel is like a celebration of joy. So I saved it to the end because to me that's the victory. That's the I that's the that's the culmination of it, right? It's like you're putting your body into the shape of a rainbow, and it's like I've embraced, I've embraced this. I've integrated this fear into myself. I've become whole. I've used yoga means union. I've become one with this aspect of me. And I don't want to say that I've become one with cancer. That's not what I'm saying, but it's in there. And what if we addressed the healing from a place of what does my body need to support itself? And I know we do. This is not like I'm coming up with this idea just to put a pin in that. But what if we put the pitchforks down and embrace what we need to move through, to be still, to find out what it is, to hear what it is that we need, to feel what it is that we need, however it comes to you in your body, to understand, to meet your body, to say, how did this happen? Why did this happen? That's always it, right? Like the anger, the fear, the grief, it all comes from the how, the what, the why, all the questions. And mountain pose, standing still, being still, standing in your strength, standing in your power, having that conversation with yourself and listening to your body. I know I say that a lot. I say that hopefully every episode because that's what this is all about. Listen to your body. What is it trying to tell you? Is it telling you that it's tired? Is it telling you that it's weary? Is it telling you that you're pushing it too hard? Is it telling you that it needs rest? And are you loving your body, or are you using it as a beast of burden? And I'm guilty of that. We all are. So the whole practice, right? Yoga is a practice. The whole practice is is listen, be still and listen. Be still and feel, but be still. And like I said, mountain pose, it is the stillness. It is standing still. Be your own little David versus Goliath, obviously. So, but be that for yourself and give yourself that space. And no matter what it is, it can be something physical, it can be something mental, it can be something emotional, it can be something outside yourself. Oftentimes, it is something outside yourself, unless we're talking about something that's attacking you from within, right? The call is coming from inside the house, right? So, no matter what it is, my answer is always going to start with be still. Meet yourself in stillness and allow the tears, allow the screams, allow whatever comes out of your body to come out for you. Go somewhere quiet. Bring a yoga mat. Give yourself that because as women, yes, and on Mother's Day, I'm just going to say as women, and I'm not going to sugarcoat that. I'm not going to non-gender, and I'm not going to. You can crucify me. No offense. God, crucify me for that later. As women who give birth, in theory, right? Who have a natural Darwinian predisposition to nurture, you know who we never nurture? Ourselves. And I'm not going to get into this because it's not my, not what I do, but oh, nurture yourself first. Nurture yourself first. And how you do that is different for everyone, but it is so important. Don't wait. Start today. And that doesn't mean be a selfish, horrible human being. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying nurture your body, nurture your heart, nurture your truth first, and stand in that truth like your life depends on it. Because, my darling, it may ultimately. And as someone who has denied their truth, overlooked their truth, bent over backwards for others to her own detriment, yeah, we're done with that. We're done with that. So on Mother's Day, for my mom, for all the moms, for all the daughters, and even for all the sons, and everyone in the middle, everyone in between, stand in your truth, be still, and listen to your body before your body screams in the only way it knows how to get your attention. So, from there, I would like to share how much I appreciate each and every one of you for sharing this space with me. And if I may ask, that you please feel free to share the same with your loved ones. For more goodness, follow me on all the socials at Above the Ground Podcast and visit my website, airsaboveyoga.com. Don't forget to check out all of my amazing sisters at the Divas That Care Network and also any of my other episodes. You can find us on Spotify, Odyssey, Apple, Amazon, iHeartRadio, YouTube, or anywhere else that you feel guided. Again, my name is Gia-Raquel Rose, owner of Airs Above Yoga, and you are listening to Above the Ground podcast, where every day, even the crappy ones, is a good one.